Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today for the Untangle Tech Talk series. Today, we'll be showcasing one of our NG Firewall applications, our application control. My name is Shannon Bonfiglio. I'm part of the marketing team here at Untangle, and I'll be your host today. I also have with us one of our sales engineers, Chad McNaughton, who will be taking us through the presentation and providing an in-depth demonstration. Just a few housekeeping rules before we get started. If you do select to use a phone, you will need to use the access code that is provided. You can also use your computer speakers. Just a reminder, this webinar is being recorded, so you'll be able to rewatch or follow up on any parts of the webinar that you want to go back on. An email will be sent out within 24 hours after this webinar has ended. As always, we have a few staff members on hand to help answer questions. So on the right-hand side, you'll see a questions box. So please just submit those questions that you may have on the right-hand side. If you do have a very specific support question, I would recommend just emailing support@untangle.com. We can't really provide custom specific answers if you have a specific networking issue. Just as a reminder, this is a very highly technical webinar. So if you are unfamiliar with Untangle or networking solutions in general, then this webinar will probably not be ideal for you. We are going to get pretty nitty-gritty into the configuration abilities within application control today. So we do have some 101, which are higher level topics that you can check out on our website if this seems to be too technical for you. And as always, if you have a sales or support question, please email us sales@untangle.com or support@untangle.com. We'll be happy to help out. And I think that's it, so I'll pass it over to Chad.
All right, thanks, Shannon. As Shannon said, everybody, this is a Tech Talks webinar. We're gonna go pretty deep into application control. So if you're new to Untangle, this may go a little bit over your head. But as Shannon said, hit us up at support presales@untangle.com with any questions. So what's application control? So this is our module that is going to scan your mobile application signatures. So we're not talking about URL traffic in a browser. We're talking about the Twitter app, the YouTube app on a tablet, a phone, maybe even a Chromebook. So application control allows Untangle to see sessions from those mobile apps, given the visibility and the ability to block and tar pit and flag that traffic. So we're going to be able to accurately identify thousands of common apps, social networking, peer-to-peer stuff, instant messaging, streaming. There's about 2,000 apps. We'll go look for sure. I think it's maybe 1,900 something. So we're going to get good metrics and good reporting from mobile device sessions. And this is really becoming an integral part of a filtering solution for any network that allows mobile devices to connect, especially BYOD, when people are bringing in their own devices that you may not have explicit control over. So when you jump into the application control module, you'll see some status tabs. You'll get 3 of those here. You'll see status, applications, rules. So the traffic tab is basically going to show the total number of sessions that are being scanned by the app. The app location statistics section shows the total number of apps that can be detected. The rules section lets you see how many custom rules you have configured and how many of those rules are actually active. So on the applications tab, this is where you can actually jump in and see the applications, the signatures, the descriptions. This is where you're going to want to do most of your blocking tar pitting. This is our preferred way for using application control, and we'll talk about why here in just a second. So you can simply check block to stop these apps or flag to allow them and kind of quietly file them away as a violation in your reports. Tar pitting, which we'll talk about it more in depth as well, is an interesting option because it blocks traffic without really resetting that connection. So a new session isn't created. The app, the user don't really know they're being blocked, and those are really good options specifically for things like proxy apps, or if they're trying to do something nefarious like that. That's a pretty smart application. We can tar pit that instead of blocking it so it doesn't know it's being blocked. Just a quick tip, application control contains hundreds of application signatures. So sorting by columns can be a time saver until this week when we have a new feature I'm going to show you. So application control actually has a search bar now, which is honestly been a long time coming. We're at almost 2,000 signatures now. So the Applications tab has a couple of other options. So we mentioned block and tar pit. You'll see the unique identifier of the application. I always recommend copy pasting from the application signature in app control, because some of them have some weird spelling, some strange syntax. Instagram is spelled like you see on my screen. It's Instagram. So they have room for, that extra A. They don't use it. So there are some apps like that are spelled kind of strange. Just go over to app control and the applications and just copy paste from there, or from your reports if that's where you're seeing it. So the block box is going to let you block, reset the sessions for that app. For a TCP connection, this actively resets the connection. For UDP, it will drop the packet completely and kill that session. Tar pit is going to enable tar pitting sessions. For TCP, this makes it look to both the client and the server that the other party is receiving the data but is not responsive. It just silently drops it. So for UDP, it's identical behavior to block, except the connection's kept open, so the next packet will be dropped instead of recategorized as a new session. So that's the neat thing about tar pitting. For a smart app, like a proxy app, like UltraSurf or something like that, we would tar pit that, because then the app doesn't see that session reset. No connection is dropped. So it basically just goes into a void and it doesn't work. And then obviously flagging is going to get reporting on that traffic. That way we'll be able to see everything in the reports modules. So back on the Applications tab, when you're scrolling through these, and we'll take a peek at this on my server here in just a minute. Name is just the standard name for the application. The category is a pretty general, high-level description of the application. Productivity is interesting. Productivity and risk are both conditions that we can filter by and throttle with. So productivity is kind of best thought of as an index between 1 and 5 that rates the potential for each app to improve or increase overall productivity of your network's users. So think of it as, work apps versus fun apps. Games, social networking, those are rated pretty low on the productivity scale. Things like Java, GitHub, things like that are rated really high. Risk is another index with values between 1 and 5 that rates potential for each protocol or app to allow questionable content onto the network. So that's another one we can do. If you want to flag all mobile applications that have a risk value over 2, that's a condition we can set up. We could even throttle those, put quotas on them, lots of different stuff with Untangle's complete package. The description obviously just provides a bit more detailed description for each app in the list. In some of these, the description is much larger than what will actually fit on the grid. So you can click on any description to see a pop-up window with the full text, and I'll show you how that looks on our demo server. So the Rules tab. This is a really handy tip here. You're going to create rules, obviously, to get granular control over your mobile apps with different levels of access for different users, even in that same policy. But a quick tip is that these signatures in the Application tab will almost always trigger before the rules in the Rules tab. It just requires fewer packets to qualify that traffic. So if you're blocking apps, you should avoid creating rules for the same apps. Just do that in the Applications tab. Application control out of the box offers a few of my favorite reports that Untangle creates. I think a quick peek and keeping this on your dashboard is becoming a really, really crucial thing because of BYOD and the nature of mobile traffic. Even if you're a school with Chromebooks, iPads, that kind of stuff, we'll see mobile app traffic rather than just strictly URL traffic from a browser. So like all of Untangle's apps, app controls reports can be accessed via the dashboard, the reports viewer, or through the app itself. All predefined reports will be listed with any custom reports that have been created by you or us. And then reports can be searched and further defined using these same time selectors conditions that you see in this graphic here. So it's a real quick, easy thing to just jump into all sessions and see every mobile session that application control is scanning. But you can drill down pretty easily, top applications by size, that kind of thing, what mobile app is chewing up your bandwidth. That's a really, really handy report, I feel like. So speaking of, let's hop over to my demo server here real quick and go take a look. So I mentioned it briefly. This is a good week to check out a webinar. Untangle's new version came out on Tuesday of this week. This is version 14.1 now of Untangle. And as I said, one of my favorite additions actually occurred in application control, because now we have our cool little search bar in the applications menu. So we talked a little bit about the status pages. So under the status tabs, you see, as I was saying, this traffic data here, the application data here, 1,971 known applications in our signature set. This is provided by a third-party vendor, so this isn't something that you customize or have to maintain or anything like that. This updates with our version updates. You don't really have to add or prune anything on this list here. And then again, the rules tab will just quickly show you what's happening, how many rules are active, how many total rules you have. You can see at my demo server, we don't have a lot set up. Then we'll come over here to the applications tab. This is where the actual application signatures are. So all those columns we were just talking about, name, category, productivity, these all live right here. So if we wanted to see the least productive apps, you'd see that they're, streaming and social networking and games and file transfer, peer-to-peer stuff. So the most productive apps, come down to workplace use. So things like the collaboration category you notice there. These are really handy. I like that we have built-in rules even in our bandwidth control app to throttle unproductive applications. I think the threshold is 2 that we look at. But you can see here, mostly you'll see these two numbers pretty disparate. If an app is highly productive, it's usually a pretty low risk, and sometimes vice versa, as you can see. So it depends. This is a really handy qualifier, I think, though. You can also sort alphabetically if you need to, but as I was saying, this search bar is my favorite addition in years, in 2 versions probably. This is basically, being used throughout a lot of our systems that have big scrolling lists like this, intrusion prevention, web filter categories, things like that. So if I'm just looking for, example, the Facebook mobile app, we can just start typing and it'll narrow it down. And this is an interesting example because you can see that's the Facebook app, but aspects of Facebook have their own individual signatures. So I could maybe come in here and just block the Facebook app, but maybe I don't want to necessarily do that. I'd rather see what people are doing with it. So I could leave it open and flag it. If I wanted to, I could always block or tar pit the parts of it that people enjoy to use. There's a lot of different ways to do this with Untangle, whether or not you want to be heavy-handed and just block traffic or throttle it, tar pit things like this. This is a fun thing we can do with mobile traffic. So if I jump out of that, I do want to jump over here and show you a few of those options I mentioned with proxy apps. So the proxy category we flag by default. All those apps get reported on. We don't block or tar pit anything really out of the box, but these are really good use cases for tar pitting rather than blocking, as I said. Things like UltraSurf, the Onion router, these are pieces of software that were designed to circumvent firewalls for the governments of China and North Korea, respectively. So they're pretty powerful services. So if you block them, for example, UltraSurf will see its connection reset. It'll see a new session generate, and it will say, well, something's blocking me, so I'll use these other methods to connect. And that generally never ends until it gets to connect. So we would rather tar pit that because it basically won't reset that connection, no new session. And the user of the app don't really know they're being blocked. And to be perfectly honest, a user with something like UltraSurf or the Onion router or Siphon, using these apps on a phone, on a tablet, that it could be a fairly advanced user on your network. These are not simple things to install and use. They're unfortunately getting a lot easier. And the caveat to proxy apps is obviously these signatures will change. This is a nonstop cat and mouse thing. So we're doing a really great job blocking all these proxies. Maybe the Tor signature changes next week, so we have to get our signature set updated. So that's kind of the nature of the beast in 2018 with proxy apps. The thing that won't see, obviously, is something like a Chrome extension. If they download a extension to Chrome, that's a part of your desktop security and locking down your Chrome accounts and things like that. Chromebooks are an interesting example. In Untangle's application control reporting, we can go see, the top apps being used by session, by size, top flagged apps, all kinds of stuff. I'm going to go to top applications by size. So what we're basically seeing are the mobile apps that are chewing up my bandwidth. There's always going to be a little bit of others, and there's always going to be some irrelevant things like HTTP and SSL. To me, those aren't super relevant for what I want to see. Google Plus may not be relevant as well on a Google domain like I'm on. So if I just eliminate those, we can see that, you know, Amazon, Craigslist, and CNN are kind of winning the race here, and then Facebook. So Amazon, you know, is 3 gigabytes of data here on mobile traffic. So that's a lot to me. With Untangle's new reporting, if I want to, I can click right here and add this as a condition. So I can say, yes, show me all of the reports that can give me information about that app. So you'll see it narrows that down to only the applications that offer that condition. So if I were to go into bandwidth control, we would be able to see top application by sent bytes, by received bytes. If we go look at total bytes, there's my Amazon, you know, because I have that condition in there. So Untangle's reporting is really slick. When you see, you know, a signature like this, Facebook in all caps, Google in all caps, you're seeing mobile traffic. Something I've noticed just through experience here at Untangle, working in support and in pre-sales, is that you might look in, for example, you might look in your web filter reports under your top sites being requested. And you could see something in here along the lines of mobile.twitter.com. And that's interesting to me because that's someone on their mobile device using a browser to go to that URL. So maybe they know that their Twitter app is blocked, and now they're using, you know, Chrome or Safari on their phone or tablet to actually go to the URL. So that can give you a cool insight into how they're getting to their destination. So maybe they've figured out that you're blocking the mobile app, and now they're using the browser on their phone. So maybe we need to go block that at the URL level, or block the browser, you know, a couple of different options. But the actual application control module does include about 20 reports out of the gate. And once again, all of these can be modified, saved as custom reports, and we can still create new blank reports from scratch. So if you're not seeing what you're looking for in these 20 reports by default, just let us know. You know, we're still winning awards for our support team out here. So if you have a question, like I said, like Shannon said, email us at support@untangle.com, because it can really, really speed things up here. You know, if you have a question, please throw it in the chat, but obviously we can't get to all of them when they're that specific. So just shoot us an email and we'll let you know. I also want to touch a little bit on a couple of apps that tie into application control. I talked just a bit about bandwidth control. It will actually leverage application control signatures. So if you look at my default rule set here, you'll see that it's already leveraging a couple of mobile apps. So this will obviously require both apps to be installed, but category is remote access. We're prioritizing that because we have remote users. But then you see right below that, productivity is less than 2. We deprioritize that. So that's actually set to be throttled. If I wanted to throttle that even more, I could come down here and change my options. But that's how bandwidth control can tie into application control with its categories, its risk and productivity levels, to just throttle these apps, and if you don't want to outright block or tar pit them. Application control signatures also get leveraged in web filter. If you like, web filter can actually allow inclusions or exemptions based on mobile application signatures. You could, for example, say this username or this MAC address or this IP has access to these mobile apps, and nobody else that's being filtered by this version of web filter will have that access. So this is an interesting thing too. This is a really, really good example of the value of the Untangle NG complete package, because it lets you leverage different apps through their friends like this. So web filter and app control and bandwidth control are a really good kind of 3-headed monster at the front of your network security solution here at the gateway. A couple other things on app control here. I did want to touch on the rules tab. So we mentioned blocking on the applications tab rather than the rules tab, and that's accurate. That's what our support team will tell you. That's what our engineers will tell you, because of the way these packets are identified with these signatures. So if a packet comes through Untangle and it's let's look for Google Earth. There's Google Earth, spelled pretty odd, obviously. If someone's going to Google Earth and I have this set to block, it's going to block it pretty instantly because it's identified so quickly. But if I, however, want to do this in a rule rather than in the application itself, this would probably catch second. So I could do application is, and I could do the Goog Earth. See, this is why I should copy and paste. I'm not sure if that's right. And then I could block this, but this will actually allow a few packets through. So I've seen this allow a connection a time or two, but sometimes block it. So if you really want to be certain, our advice is to actually do that on the applications tab here and to not duplicate it with a rule. So you can see we have this rule here to target all traffic classified as proxies. That might be a handy thing for you to do. You can just do it right here. I personally prefer to do that through the checkboxes over here. I think for proxy apps specifically, I think it catches quicker and then they're not able to get around your untangle. As you can see though, the rules do offer quite a bit of conditions and they tie into the same apps that we were just kind of leveraging, bandwidth control, web filter. So if we wanted to, we could leverage URL traffic here, web filter categories, or even users in your domain or group if you're connected to like an Active Directory through our directory connector module. So there's a lot of customization available in application control. One of the handy things is MAC addresses and MAC vendors. We're talking about mobile devices. So you could, in theory, create a policy for all of the iPads based on MAC vendor, Apple. That would obviously catch any Apple device connecting to that network. But if you have some one-to-one iPads that are subnetted, we could do that. So there's a lot of different things we can catch. But as I said, the applications themselves, some of them are honestly just smarter than others. So if it's something like a proxy app, a VPN app, something used for VPN or tunneling, that's a separate category here. And some of these are obviously going to help someone proxy around a filter. We offer OpenVPN on Untangle. We can also block it from outside, from internal. So this is where we can see a lot more apps. Proxy category in Untangle, I think, has about 15, something like that. And you can see here we've got 50 or so. So this is a really big category, and this is available as well. And you'll see that some of these are work-related VPN, and some of these are not. So you could come into the actual VPN category with your filter and then say, I want to find the VPNs that are less productive. Those are the ones that people are using to, get free VPN services to, proxy their connections. Things like, TunnelBear and Turbo VPN, that kind of stuff. So that's more or less application control in a nutshell. As I said, the reporting is really good. There's a lot of it available. We do just have quick session viewers too. So if you just want a quick peek at what's happening on the mobile traffic, you just do a session viewer. It's just like the session viewers have always been. If you want to narrow down anything, just punch it into the search field. It'll narrow that down for you. So let's jump back over here to my slide deck. We've got a couple more to go through here. Then we'll see if you guys have any questions we can touch on as well. Are there any questions hanging out there, Shannon, that we could get to real quick?
Yeah, there was a question on what order do the rules apply? So would firewall apply the rules first and then application control, or how does that work?
Sure. Yeah, it'll depend on your applications, obviously, what you have installed. But you can see in our session viewer here, if you scroll over and you look at our pipeline, you'll be able to see kind of the order that applications scan in at layer 7, layer 3. So basically, as you can see here, we'll do firewall first, any kind of captive portal, that kind of stuff, and then application control will jump in pretty early. So application control identifies packets pretty soon, and that's why we like to do the application tab rather than the rules tab, because it's just a slower process to identify them. Untangle's apps don't necessarily work in an assembly line manner like this because we use virtual pipelining. So our apps tend to do more of a dog pile kind of method. So you see firewall first, but that means it was just the first on the pile. So they're all scanning this traffic simultaneously because we don't use what's called proxy chaining for apps. So this virtual pipelining makes things go a little faster because we inspect packets, I think, a little more streamlined. It's not a long assembly line like some other services like ours are. But that's how you can kind of see the order there in your session viewer.
Okay, there was a question on if you can block applications for specific users or groups.
Sure. You could do that a couple of different ways. Excuse me. The easy common way probably would be through policy management. So you could have your default policy set, and then a teacher's policy could have completely different application control rules. All you have to do is come over here and say, I'm going to install this app for them, and then you customize it for that group. So this would come down to either using Policy Manager, which is part of that complete package, or as I showed you earlier, the Web Filter Rules tab has the ability to do some of this stuff too. So what's a good example? Let's open Facebook for just me when I'm logged in. So quick, easy example. Let's say I have to authenticate with my username. I'm going to make one up. First initial, last name. So anytime I sign in, I have access to the Facebook app. So they'll stand up a captive portal on my mobile device. I'll authenticate, and then I will have access to things like Facebook. If I wanted Facebook and Instagram, maybe I could do Facebook, and then what do we see? Instagram, something like that. And I just leave this set to pass. So you saw it doesn't have to be username. There's a lot of different conditions. Maybe you don't have authentication, but maybe when someone's using this specific mobile device, they'll have access to this. You could do this by MAC address. Mobile devices don't often have static IPs. So you can maybe do this by MAC address, vendor. There's a few different ways to do that, but Web Filter can actually do that a little quick and easy. For example, if this is the only two apps you have. You have Web Filter and you have application control. Well, you're not going to be able to do username unless you set that up locally. So there's a lot of different ways to do that. But Policy Manager is kind of the end-all absolute way to do it. Web Filter is kind of the quick, easy, dirty way to do it. So there's a couple different ways to do it. But yeah, we can always isolate traffic like that for a device or a user and give them different permissions. You bet.
Great. I think the rest of the questions you're going to cover on the next slide. So I will let you
good.
do that.
Right on. All right. Wait for it, everybody. Here it is. All right. So here's some frequently asked questions about app control. I'm already using Firewall. Is an app control redundant? I wanted to mention this, but as Shannon said, I knew this was coming up. So the Firewall app works to block traffic by IP addresses and/or ports. So you saw those conditions in app control. This is scanning all traffic, looking for a match, even if it's not coming across that expected port for that protocol. So maybe your Facebook app is using a different port today. It's going to be able to catch that in application control based on the signature. We're not going to have to be stuck with the port or an interface, something like that. So it's a little bit. I think it's a little bit more dynamic because it looks for the signature. We're not limited to a port, something like that. I think I discussed this a little bit too. When should I block versus target? You generally just want to target apps that are hard to block. I think that's the easiest way to kind of delineate that in your brain. The line in the sand is this app hard to block? There are apps that aren't proxies that are getting hard to block. Things like FaceTime on iOS, things like Fortnite, which is becoming kind of an epidemic in streaming and content filtering. So anything like that's tough to block or tries to circumvent blocking. As I said, that block option resets the TCP connection. And so the device, the user, they immediately know that the session's been reset. So tar pitting acknowledges the receipt of the data, but it doesn't send the data. So it's just dropped. We don't really send that request denied. We just accept your packet and let it drop. It just kind of goes out into a void when we tar pit. Then how can I allow an individual user to use a blocked application? So you could use Policy Manager like we just said, or we could use that Web Filters Rules tab. So Web Filter Rules, that's only someone's going to correct me because I'll be wrong. I think that's only about 2-3 versions old, 2.5, something like that. Web Filter Rules, I think, are still a little bit new to folks. You don't assume Web Filter can do those things. I don't think. A lot of people don't when I talk to them in pre-sales and in our software demos. I really push that option now because it's really cool. Maybe all you have is Web Filter. You can do some interesting stuff with it. If you're using application control light, you have to build your own signatures, which is time consuming and no fun. So that would be a good use case to just add application control to your a la carte package if that's all you're doing. It would just give you a little more visibility and more granular control over those mobile apps. So the Web Filter rules are, like I said, the easy way to do it. If it's a school, a big business where we have something like Active Directory, you have executives, students, faculty, different kinds of groups like that. All these groups can have different conditions and filtering through the different apps when we set up Policy Manager. So there's a couple different ways to do that. It's anyone on this webinar, I think, is probably pretty well versed in Untangle by now. So there's almost always 2 or 3 ways to do things. Application control is kind of a black and white thing though, because we're only talking about mobile apps. So I think that's a little easier than some of this other stuff because it pulls from so many different places. So we've mentioned a few times Untangle's award-winning support team out here in Colorado. You can always call us if you have a live support subscription. You can email us support@untangle.com or presales@untangle.com. But if you need a little bit more help than a standard phone call or a standard email conversation can offer, we do provide professional services. So these can just help save time and money and let you just kind of get everything configured quickly and get on with life. So whether or not you're coming from a competitor's product, if you have an old Sonic wall and it's expired, you're putting an Untangle on the network, we could actually help you with our conversion service. We would get your Sonic wall config, or we would remote into that firewall, copy those configs into the Untangle before we even ship the box to you. So it's a very plug and play thing when we do conversion service. The system install and configuration service is very handy too. The most popular one is our system optimization service. It's also the cheapest, but it's basically just a 2-hour dedicated support call. You get one of our engineers on the phone with you for 2 hours. They log out of our support queues and they go through every single bell and whistle in your Untangle that you want. And that's a really, really handy service. System optimizations are available anytime. The other two, conversion and the install, are only really available at purchase because they're kind of a one-time setup type service. The system optimization, you could, in theory, buy one of those a month or every other week if you felt like it. Maybe 6-7 months down the road after having Untangle on the network, you're not sure if it's doing everything you want. You can always get one of our support engineers to do a system optimization, and it's basically an appointment that you would set with them, and then they'll get on the phone with you for a couple hours, and then you have them for follow-ups for a couple of weeks after that as well, just to make sure everything's still working and doing what you need it to do. So I also wanted to mention Command Center. So Untangle's centralized management is called Command Center. For any of you that utilize this, it's had some pretty big changes here lately. Number one, it's free now. So this is just one of the benefits of the Untangle Complete package. It's just included. So you'll get full remote management, policy management, create and sync master template configurations, so your boxes stay synced even to their master config in the cloud. It's doing some really, really interesting things. We're helping you manage your network and your fleet of Untangle firewalls from a single pane of glass finally. And if you're not privy to it, this actually, it's free of charge now with the complete package. Obviously, it's still where your account lives. If you don't have our complete package, you'll see services here. You'll have your account page available. You'll see some light reporting and things like that. But our complete package is what enables full remote management, policy management, all that fun stuff. And we also do some promotions here and there. We still offer our trade-in and trade-up program. As I said, if, for example, you have an old Sonic wall or a Cisco or something like that you're moving away from, that it's, the contracts are expired, you want to change it up, let your sales rep know. We can offer you a little coupon code, if you're going to trade in. If you're using old Untangle hardware, for example, you want to trade up to a newer box. This is a real handy thing. We don't do tons of promos, but this one is kind of ongoing. So if you want any more information, you can call us at the number there, the 866 number for sales, or you can just email sales@untangle.com. You get some really good discounts. We're one of these companies in this industry that's actually still a small business. Untangle's 50 employees or less worldwide. So I feel like that's a pretty different thing in our industry. So we do have, some leeway, so maybe we'll give you a trade-in coupon or something like that. So I personally love that Untangle's pricing is available online. You don't have to go through, 10 salespeople to see what we cost, but just keep in mind that's retail. So if you do have something that qualifies for one of our promos, be sure to let your sales rep know. We might be able to do a little bit better on the price. Then again, if you do have any questions, you can contact us. The Untangle Wiki and the Untangle support page are both great resources for self-help. The Untangle support page, support support.untangle.com actually got a really good revamp lately. It has been rebuilt and has tons and tons of new documentation. So if you have any questions, obviously contact us sales@untangle.com or on the website at untangle.com. Shannon, are there any other questions hanging out there that we can answer before we jump off?
I think you answered most of the questions, but what we're going to do is thank you everyone for joining us today. I'm going to end the webinar, but we're going to stop recording it, but we're going to keep the webinar going just because we know we always get a last few minute questions that come rolling in. So if any of you have any questions, we're going to stay on for a little bit just to help answer those. But I am going to stop the recording now. So thank you everyone for joining, and we hope this at least explained a little bit of application controls features, and we hope to see you next time.